Hey, good morning. Yep. Today is August 31st, the last day of August in 2023. And that means winter's coming. Yep. So make sure you get all your firewood cut if you're going to cut firewood. And I'm still trying to put hay up. And I see I got a little bit of dog hair on me. Excuse that. I have a pair of German Shepherds. And if I don't rough them up and, give them loving in the morning, because I have one sleeps with me. See, I've always had German Shepherds. And the last one was Samantha, and she passed away. But one of the things, I said, not going to get another dog. Well, you know how that works. So I ended up going and looking at a litter of German Shepherd puppies. And the way I always get a dog is I let the dog pick me. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I sit in front of the litter and I let the pups come to me. The first pup that comes to me is picking me. I'm not picking what dog I want. I'm letting the dogs pick who they want. And I've always found by doing that the dog is very loyal. That if you allow it as a pup to pick you. So Sheeby picked me. And what did you know? She'd be the runt of the litter. And odd color, dark black color. So they were about 4.5 weeks old at the time. I got home and I got to thinking, I always felt bad because when I go to work, Samantha would be home by herself, but she was happy to see me when I got home. She knew exactly what time I got off work, and she could hear the truck coming. So I said, you know what? Instead of having one be by itself and bored all day long, two's got to be better, right? So I ended up going back, and Shelby picked me the second time. And right now they're sisters. One is really almost all black with a little bit of tan and weighs about 75 pounds. That's Sheeby that sleeps with me. And then the other one is Shelby, and she's brown and tan. And she weighs, 106 pounds? Yeah, and they're 3-year-olds. One I call crazy, which is Sheeby, because she's constantly spinning, jumping, and Shelby, the heavier one, just lays around like a lazy dog. And all right, let's get back to the show here, back to the channel. So I thought today we would talk a little bit more on the people supplying their own parts, whether you're doing a mobile service or whether you're doing repairs at your shop. I want your take on that. You'll hear my take. We'll talk some on growing your business and the growth and what, that it won't happen overnight in different ways that you can get in and grow. Because bigger isn't always better. Trust me, bigger is not always better. And then I thought we would talk a little bit about, for you guys that are in the business, of advertising. If you're looking for ways to advertise and do it as cheaply as possible, for you guys that are floor planning, maybe the rest of you don't know this, but for the guys that are floor planning with, Cub Cadet or any of them, Simplicity, John Deere, what have you, most of these companies do what they call a co-op, and that is they cover up to a certain percentage of your advertising budget but you have to be advertising their stuff. So if you're a multi-manufacturer floor planner, you can advertise and co-op with those, but I think, if I understand it right, you can only advertise like the Cub Cadets. If you're getting paid by a Cub Cadet, then it's got to be about the Cub Cadets and then about your business. But you can't mention that you're selling over here, Troy-Bilts, or, well, you can, because Troy-Bilt is basically a Cub Cadet, MTD, but like a John Deere. And a lot of the manufacturers up this neck of the woods do not want competition sitting on the floor next to each other. And they try to push for two different shops, two different sales. All right, so we talked yesterday about the mobile service. And I believe it was Rodney. He's doing it right now. And there was also, I'm sorry, I'm not good with names. Remembering, that's what happens when you get old. A fellow doing the same idea, but he's doing it in the automobiles, cars and trucks. And there was a mention that there was no markup on parts because most of the customers have their own parts ready for you to do the service on it. And what are my thoughts on it? Well, I've had in this past year 4 customers that I can think of that brought their own parts. So what is my thought process when somebody brings their own parts to have us put them on? What it tells me is that the customer either doesn't trust me or they're thinking if they supply the parts that they found online, that is going to be a lot cheaper than if you were a dealer dealing with Sten's Rotary, the OEM manufacturer and stuff. And the big thing that I say is no. Because out of the last 4 that I can remember this past year, somebody come dragging parts in. I mean, even the friggin' fuel line they supplied wasn't correct. Now, this is just my take on it. You can take it or leave it however you want. But I'm going to run my business the way I want and I need it to be. I can't have customers dictating how we run a shop. We're trying to save the customer as much money as possible. And by doing so, the people that brought stuff in thinking they had the right parts that they had ordered online, and it come to find out that they weren't correct, and then I had to reorder, and then they're stuck with the parts, and then they want to know if I would take those parts and take them off the price of the parts that I did order that were correct. Sometime, if you catch me on the right day, I probably would have said yes. But you have to teach your customer how you operate. You have to instill trust. They have to trust you. And they're going to pay a little bit more of a premium service by having you do it versus them doing it by themselves. Now, I can understand to some extent with the mobile service, but if I were going to be running a mobile service, I would buy by the case filters for John Deere, Cub Cadet, I think there's 5 different oil filters that we carry here that are fast moving. To buy a case of each isn't that expensive through one of the aftermarket companies. Now, the rare exception would be if I have a customer that's got fairly new John Deere or a fairly new Simplicity. Those are the 2 big ones that I can think of, Ferris. And they want to stick with OEM. And the only way I can get OEM for those guys is to go to the dealership. And the cost would be equal, if not a little bit more, because you got my time and gas money going to the dealership and getting it. So I've had customers bring the OEM stuff from John Deere to have us do a service on their 1-year-old John Deere instead of having the John Deere dealership do it. And it's money. It's the labor. The labor at the John Deere dealership, I think, is around $120 an hour. And we bumped it up to 55 thanks to you guys. But we're $55 an hour. We're still less than half of what they would charge to do a service. A normal service in our shop is less than an hour. We bill an hour, but it's usually less than an hour. And at the John Deere dealership, they bump it to 1.5 to 2 hours. So at 2 hours, at 120, there's $240 just in labor that customer would have to pay versus 110 with us. So I understand that aspect. But your older machines that, you're worried about warranties and stuff like that are no longer available for the machines, I'll get the parts. And I don't order parts until I get the unit here. And what do you mean by that? I mean, I have all the fast moving to do a quick service on something. But when it comes to belts, coils, engine parts, switches, what have you, I mean, I've got a ton of inventory. I've got probably around $80,000 still in inventory in here. But I don't order ahead per machine if it's above and beyond that service. If we have it here, great. If not, then that machine is going to sit until I get the correct parts in for that unit. I think with a mobile service that you're kind of screwing yourself if you're allowing the customers to get their own parts. And Rodney, you can speak to this. How often is the customer right when they order their own parts? And who is doing it? You've been doing it for a while. Who's doing it that feels the need to supply their own parts? Or is that something that you've decided that, it's be less money out of your pocket if they supply what you need and you just supply the labor to do it? I'd like to have your response on that. You've got to have great customer service, but that's where you draw the line. You can't have customers telling you how to run your shop. I will listen to what a customer has to say of how we could be better at what we're doing. But I'm not going to allow any customer to tell me how to run this shop. And that is, well, I'm going to supply the parts. I just need you. No. And 90% of my customers, 95% of my customers, they keep coming back because they trust me and they know that we're going to get the best prices on the parts that they need, and we're not fudging anything. Yes, we do mark up parts. And I'll be honest with you, I've had to resort to buying them online on eBay and Amazon, getting them in here from the Chinese, because my customers are not illiterate either. Most of them know how to surf the internet, how to get on Amazon and eBay. And they don't realize that most of you guys are still using Stens, Rotary, or the OEM manufacturers like Gardner Canal, Atlantic Power, uh, and they still haven't adjusted their prices of what the going market is on those parts. All right, so my take is no, the customer is not going to supply parts because it never works. Never works out. They end up with a box of parts that can't be used. So the other thing I want to talk about briefly is growth. How fast should you be growing and how big should you get? Well, that depends on a number of factors, and the main one is how big do you want to get? I can tell you from past experience, bigger is not better. The bigger you are, the more employees you have, the more headaches come with it. Yes, the more revenue comes with it as well if you're doing it right. But you have to be able to grow with the business. And the best way I know of to achieve growth is to find new markets to either peddle your wares on. It's like us, I call it the heyday, but it was crazy. I was working 7 days a week, 16, 18-hour days. But we were selling on eBay, Amazon, Sears, Walmart, and 3 other ones that you probably never heard of with little to no competition. I mean, it was crazy for a while. We were filling, I don't know if you know how big a USPS tote is, but we were filling 15, 20 of those totes a day. And we actually had the postmaster coming directly over on his lunch hour to pick all those totes up so that the regular carrier wouldn't have to try to fit them all in their vehicle doing the rural routes because we have a mailbox. But with that came a lot more responsibility, trying to manage employees. And the key to any growth is having the right employees. You don't want an employee that you have to talk to with. You have to find critical people that you can trust. And for some of you that like to micromanage, getting bigger is not always better. Because you're trying to still control every aspect of the business. When we were going guns to the wall, I had this gal. I ended up letting her go, or she put her 2 weeks notice in because she had sat down with me a few years back and said, you know what, I would like to go and further my education in college and get a degree. And she wanted to get one in pharmacy. And I have never, ever held an employee from trying to better themselves. That's just my style. But she was technically the boss. I mean, she handled all the phone calls. She handled all the dealerships and aftermarket companies. She handled a lot of times the employees that were here so that they weren't having problems. She even ran shotgun over the shop area where we're doing repairs. Her name was Krista. And we even laugh to this day that I even felt like I needed to ask Krista permission in order to even spend money on something. Because, I mean, she just, boom, boom, boom. Great customer service. Everybody loved her. But she was honest with them. That's the customer you want. Whereas the gal that replaced her was a really nice person, but she didn't want to say no to anybody. And you can't have that in your flagship, because then now you're going to get customers pissed because this person, because instead of saying no, we can't do that, she would say yes. And that hurt our business. I had to let her go. I still am good friends with her, but I can't have that, and you can't have that either in your shop as your person that's in charge that handles this stuff. Especially, we were doing mostly e-commerce, so growth can be good, but slow growth is best. If you have a large growth, then you're putting a lot of stuff at risk. And yes, everything is risk when it comes to business. It's just minimizing the risk. You know, the old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, holds true. Because that one basket may dry up, and if you have everything in that basket and there's no more market for it, you're out. So you guys that are shop owners or the guys thinking about getting in, I would want to do a slow growth. You know, if you're working out of your shed, you know, see if you can't double every year your number of units you can do and the money coming in. And the same thing with the shop owner. But you have to find areas that you can improve on to either get more customers through your door or have less costs going out your door. It's even better if you can do both. Because if you're doing both, then you're saving yourself money, and that means you're able to make a profit in the year instead of going backwards. So give me your comments too, guys, on what do you guys think about growth and how fast should you grow and the pros and cons? Because I know there's a lot of you guys out there that have got a wealth of information that if everybody can just tap into it. All right. So the last thing we're going to talk about today anyways is advertising and your advertising budget and where you can get the biggest bang out of it. I can tell you from example, when we first started out, nobody knew where we were. And I tried print ads. And all I got from print ads was somebody trying to sell me their junk lawnmower. So then we tried radio ads for a month. And let me tell you, radio ads can get expensive. And I think I spent $1,400 that month on just two stations. There were sister stations. One was talk radio and the other one was country. And that's what most of the people in this area listen to. It did bring a few people, but not many. You have Craigslist you can hit for advertising that isn't going to cost you a cent. The key with Craigslist is listing stuff in the lawn and garden section that you want to be selling to and trying to get customers from. And the way to do that is, just peddling a few lawnmowers or this or that, and then adding into the listing that your business name and contact and everything else. Same thing with Facebook. Facebook Marketplace has been one of the key areas for us for locally. You can do it one of two ways. The one way, well, there's three ways actually. One way is to actually do Facebook ads. And you can set up a budget with them and show how many people and how big an area you want to cover. And then they'll put it into other people's feeds. That's one way. You could have a large friends list and have them share your business name with their friends and their friends and their friends. Or you can use Facebook Marketplace. And within Marketplace, you can place ads. But you have to do it correctly. You have to abide by their rules. And within Facebook Marketplace, you have groups where you can post something in groups that isn't allowed to in the regular marketplace that everybody sees. And again, it's about selling something and then listing below, that you do repairs on this and that, and even a website, a link to the website. So that's another way. Google with AdSense, that can get expensive in a hurry, but they're pretty targeted. Google owns YouTube. YouTube is another way, that you can get out if you can get people to follow you at all. But they tend to be global and not your niche area. If you're doing lawnmower repairs, it isn't going to do any good to have somebody from Australia, follow you if you're trying to get more work into your shop, right? So that's another option. But you need to decide how much you want to, advertise. How much is your advertising budget? Some people have large budgets, and they figure that you have to do that like 3-4 years of consecutive radio and everything else to get the business. It all depends on what your budget is and where your customers are. Lastly, what I mentioned yesterday is just simply doing up pamphlets or having a company print out a bunch of pamphlets, fold it all for you, and then staple your business card to it, and then go door to door in each township that's close by you. And if nobody's home, just leave it in the screen door, so when they get home, they can see it. Yeah, a few of them are going to get tossed in the garbage. But if you're lucky, you get a couple people that keep your card and your prices handy and will call you. Our biggest customer draw is from word of mouth. I'll be honest with you. If one of my customers is really happy, they're going to tell everybody. Just like if one of my customers is very unhappy, they're going to tell everybody. So, the biggest thing I hear is I didn't know you were even here. And secondly, glad I found you. So on that note, you guys have a great Thursday, the last day of August, and we'll see you in the morning.